Good morning all. Welcome to lecture 1 of module 2 in database management system. Today we are going to start with our module 2. In module 2 we need to cover the following topics. The first one is about the relational database or relational database data model, the structure of the relational data model, then integrity constraints, and then about the conversion of ER diagram to relational schema. We have already studied ER diagram. Using an ER diagram we can create a relational schema, okay, that we will be teaching. The next topic is about the relational algebra, okay, next relational algebra, and final one is about the structured query language. So here in this module we are going to talk about the structured query language also, okay. Now today let us start with the first one, the structure of the relational model or relational database. So relational database. So relational database, what do you mean by relational database? It represents database as a collection of relations. In relational data model, the data or the database is represented in the form of relations or tables. Relations is nothing but tables. Okay, so don't confuse with the relations with the relationship. That is different one. Relationship is actually the connectivity between two entities. Okay, but relations means table. All the data or the database is actually represented in the form of tables. So relations means table. Clear? The relation is a table, okay, which has values. Okay, obviously table has values, and rows in the table is a collection of related data values. This row, each row in a table will represent certain records or a particular data value. Okay, clear? So row in a relational table. So row in a table is in database row in it or a relational data model. A row in a table is given a specified name. What is that? Tuple, okay, or tuple. Okay, in both ways we can pronounce it, tuple or tuple. Okay, so relation in relational database or relational table or in a table, this row is called tuple or tuple. Column is called attribute. Okay, column is called attribute. So in a table, this row is called tuple or tuple. This attribute, this column is called attribute. Clear? Okay. So this is a relational. This is a relation called employee, or this is a table, and this column employee number, name, address, mobile number, age, salary, this is called attributes. This is called attributes. Each row, okay, each row is called tuples. So each row will represent a particular record. Each row will represent a particular record. Okay, clear? Next topic, components of relational database. There are different components of relational database. The main components are domains. Okay, so we are going now in this module we are going to encounter about about these terms. What is domain, tuples, columns, keys, relations, etc. Okay, so first concept we are going to study is domains. Okay, domain, next tuple or rows, column, keys, relations. So domain. So domain is what? What do you mean by domain? Domain is a unique set of value that is permitted for an attribute in a table. Okay, suppose I have told that in table we are having different attributes. Okay, so in each attribute what all values are permitted, that is actually defined in domain. Okay, in employee, so the employee number is actually a domain. A domain name is employee name, employee number. Okay, now what type of data can be accepted in the employee number? You can accept only integers, right? In name, so a name is an is a domain name. Okay, it is also an attribute. It is also called domain name. Okay, here what will be the what are the type of data it can be accepted in this name, which are characters. Okay. So those are called domain. Okay, domain is nothing but a unique set of values permitted for an attribute in a table. Clear? So it has three parts. What are the name, data type, value. Okay. For example, a domain name, domain of month of year, domain name called month of year, have the following things. That what is the domain name? Domain name is month or month of year. What is the data type? Here the data type is what? Data type is date, not data. It is date. Okay, you correct it. It is date. Okay, this is date, not data. So data type is date, and the values would be obviously a month means obviously the value must be from January, between January, February, March up to December. No other value can be accepted here. Okay, so that is called a domain. Okay, domain has three parts: name, data type, and value. Clear? So here an example. So this is a relation. This relation is called employee relation. Okay, relation name is employee, and here we can see that the domain name, these are the domain names: employee name, last name, first name, date of birth, sex, telephone number, Indian rupee. These are the domain name. Okay. So what are the type of values? Okay, what are the type of values it can accept? It can accept integer. Here it can accept integer. Here it can have string. Here also it can have string. Here it can have date. Here it can have string. Here it can have integer, and this also integer. Clear? So that is called a domain name. Clear? So this is domain type or domain value. Okay, domain value is actually the data present in that particular domain. Okay, for example, domain of an employee, D of employee means all these values, or domain of last name means all these values, domain of first name means all these values. Clear? So these are called domain. Now tuple. Next concept is tuple. Tuple or tuple. Tuple, it is also called rows. So tuple is an ordered set of values. Obviously, it is an ordered set of values. So this employee number 106,519 Matthew Thomas, 10 February 1965, mail 2413132, 45,000. This is actually an ordered set of value. So this is this represent the details of a particular employee called Matthew Thomas. Okay, so this tuple or a row represent an ordered set of value. It is having a particular order. Clear? First there the employee name is given, then the first name, last name, date of birth, and so on. It is having a particular order. Clear? Tuple is a portion of the table containing data that describes only one entity. Described only entity. Okay, which means that this tuple or the row contains the data which describes a particular entity. Okay, here we are actually describing about the entity employee. We are describing about a particular employee called Matthew Thomas. Okay, we are describing about a particular employee Matthew Thomas. Here it is storing his employee number, date of name, date of birth, salary, telephone number, and so on. Okay, this is also called a record. Each value is derived from an appropriate domain. Okay, so each value, how we are have deriving this appropriate value? We are deriving this appropriate value from the given. We are deriving this value from the appropriate domain, which means that we are actually representing each value in that row based on the domain. So for example, here in employee number it is told that it is given that the domain it is given that must be integer. Okay, the type must be integer. So we have defined the employee number as number. Okay, so similarly last name it is defined that the type must be Matthew. The domain type must be character or string. Okay, so we are storing the that value is a string. Clear? So so all these values are actually stored based on this appropriate domain, or the rule or the type that is specified in that appropriate domain. Clear? That is about tuple or rows. So this is a particular tuple. Okay, here it is a customer relation. These are the attribute name, and this is this particular row called a tuple. Here we are having only a single tuple. Okay, Kumar Singh, his address as pin code as well as his phone number. Okay, so Kumar Singh 52 by 57, 52 by 57 store 223001, this phone number, it is a tuple belonging to the customer relation. Okay, so it is a particular tuple. So this is tuple 1, particular tuple. Okay, so in a relation there may be many such tuples. This is one tuple. Okay, there may be many tuples. Okay, now columns. So column in the table, it is also called attributes. It is also called attributes or fields of a table or a relation. Okay, column is called attributes or the fields of a relation. A single cell in a table called field, a single cell in a table called field value, attribute value or data element. Okay, so it is a single cell. It is a particular cell in a table. It is called attribute. Okay, it can be called a field value or an attribute value or a data element. Okay, for example, for entity person, attributes could include eye color and height. Okay, for a entity person, it is a for an example, for a person entity, there can be many attributes. There can be many there can be many properties of of this particular person. That person's properties may be his eye color, his height, his phone number, and so on. Okay, so that property is called attribute. Okay, so here the entity person, it is having this following properties or attribute name. First one is person name, is eye color, height, phone number. Clear? Okay, so these are called attributes. These are called the attributes name, and this is the field value. Okay, this is called the field value. That value that we are entering in that particular attribute. Okay, that is called field value. Next, key of a relation. What do you mean by key? I have already discussed about key. Key is nothing but it is an attribute that can be used to uniquely identify a particular tuple or a particular row in a relation. That is called tuple. So each row has a value of a data item or a set of items that uniquely identifies a row in a table. Okay, so each of these row will be having a particular data item. Using that data item, we can uniquely identify this particular record. Okay, so here look at this table. Here we are having a data item student number. Here we are having a data item student name, student phone number, student state. So using which such data item we can identify or we can uniquely identify a particular record. Look at here. Here we are having 2 RAM. So 2 RAM means we cannot identify the student name to identify a particular record. Okay, we cannot use the student name to identify a particular record. But look at here, student number. Student number can be used to represent a particular record. For example, his student number is unique 1, 2, 3, 4. Even though we are having 2 students called RAM, we can uniquely identify those records. First RAM is given the student number 1. The second RAM is given the student number 2. Okay, so there will not be any problem or there will not be any mismatch in the data. We can uniquely identify a particular RAM. Okay, clear? So such field or such data item or such attribute is called key. So here the student number is called the key. Okay. So a key is nothing but that can be used to uniquely identify a row in a table. Clear? This is called key. It is also called a primary key. Okay, in coming sessions we will be encountering the term primary key. This is also called, this is having another name, it is also called a primary key. Okay. Now the final one, relation. So relation, we have already talked about relation. Relation is nothing but table. Okay, it is a table of value. A relation may be thought of as a set of rows and columns. A table will be represented in the form of rows and columns. A table is perceived as two-dimensional structure composed of rows and columns. The same thing repeated. Each row represents a fact that corresponds to a real world entity or relationship. Okay, so each row in a table is representing a particular record or a particular entity. Okay, so in the previous table, each row, this row, it is actually representing the properties of the student named Ram, or student with the roll number 1, or student number 1. Okay, so this represents the details of the student with roll number 2. This represents the details of the student with the roll number 3, and so on. Clear? This is the concept. Now we need to study the various some more terms related to relational model. The first one is schema of a relation. What do you mean by schema of a relation, degree of a relation, and relation state? First one is schema of a relation. So it is basically an outline of how data is organized. We have already learned about schema in module 1. The schema, it represents the structure of the data, how we can arrange a data, how we can store a data. All those things are represented in schema. So it is basically an outline of how data is organized or stored. It is denoted by, so the schema in database model, in relational database model, the schema is represented as like schema of a relation is represented like this. It is denoted by R, A1, A2, etc. up to AN. Okay, so R means the relation name or the table name, and this A1, A2, etc. up to AN is the attribute name. Okay, so a schema of a relation is actually represented like this. Suppose we are going to store a database called student. In that student, we are storing the details of student. The attributes are student name, student roll number, student name, and marks. In that case, we will denote the schema like this: student. Okay, student. Open the bracket. We will write roll number, comma, name, comma, mark. So that will be the schema. Okay. Each attribute have some domain. It is represented by domain of A, DOM of A, DOM of AI. Here DOM means the domain, is AI represents the attribute. Okay, so each attribute, it is saying that each attribute, it means that each attribute is having certain domain, and this domain is represented by DOM of A. AI means its attribute name. For example, in our student database or in a customer database, customer relation, we are having a attribute called customer ID. So the domain of customer ID must be an integer number which can store 6 digits. That is the rule here. Okay, so the domain of customer ID is actually, we are saying the rule, that is, it is an integer which can store 6 digits. So that is the domain of that particular attribute. Clear? That is called a schema of a relation. It stores how the data is organized or how the data is arranged. Okay. Degree of a relation. The degree of a relation is the number of attributes in a relation. Okay, what do you mean by degree? So degree is degree is another term we are going to study. Degree is nothing but we will just count the number of attributes present in that particular relation. That is called a degree. Okay, so here student is a, so this is a schema. Look at here, this is a schema. So student is the relation name, ID, name, age, department number, these are the attributes. So, this is called a schema. In this given schema, the degree is actually 4. Just we need to count the number of attributes 1, 2, 3 and 4. We are having 4 attributes, so the degree is 4. So, degree is nothing but the number of attributes in a particular relation. Clear? So, this schema can also be represented. We have already told that this is schema. Okay, certain schema can also be represented using the data types along with the attributes. Okay, such schema is like this. So, student, ID integer, name string, age integer, department number integer. Okay, so what is this integer? These are the data types of that particular attribute. ID must be of type integer, name must be of type string, age must be of type string, department number is of the type integer. Okay, this schema is also used in the database. Clear? Next term we are going to see is relation state. Okay, relation state is actually the particular values or the Cartesian product of the domains of its attributes, which means that the relation state is actually the combination of all domains of its attributes. Okay, so domain we have already discussed. Domain is actually saying the all the possible values an attribute can have or attribute can take. That is called a domain. Okay, so Cartesian product of all the domains, all the domains of this domains of its attributes in the relation, it is called the relation state. Okay, for example, if we are having a table called student, and it is having 3 attributes: serial, roll number, name and marks. So, the relation state is actually defined by the Cartesian product or combination of domain of serial, domain of roll number, domain of name, domain of marks. Okay, so this is called a relation state. Clear? So, for example, an attribute customer name is defined over the domain of character string of maximum length 25. Okay, which this is actually defining what is a domain. So, domain of a particular attribute is the possible value it can take. Okay, so here the domain of the here the customer name is defined that the domain must be having the character string of length 25. It can have a can accept characters of length 25. So, the domain of customer name is varchar of 25. Varchar means variable character, but the length must be within 25 characters. Okay. So, relation state, how can we mathematically explain or define a relation state R of R? So, this is called a relation state R of R. So, relation state is actually represented as small r, and this capital R is represented as the relation or our table. Okay. So, the relation state R of R is a mathematical relation of degree n. What is degree n? Degree n means, degree means the number of attributes. Okay. Degree n on domains, domain of A1, domain of A2, etc. up to domain of An. So, A1, A2, etc. up to An are the attributes. R is the relation. Okay. It is having n attributes. Clear? So, the degree is n, so n attributes. So, which is a subset of Cartesian product of the domains that defined R. Okay. So, this R of R or the relation state R is a subset of all these domains, Cartesian product of all these domains. This is the definition of relation state R. So, relation state R is actually the subset of the cross product or the Cartesian product of all the domains of the attributes. This is the definition. So, Cartesian product is nothing but the combination of all the values. It is nothing but combination of all the values from the underlying domain. Clear? So, this is called a relation state. So, all these terms are very important terms for studying of the relational data model. Okay. So, we have talked about schema, degree and as well as relation state. Okay. Before that, we have told about the relational database components: domain, tuple, columns, keys, relations. Okay, and all about in columns also we have told about attributes. Okay, the column can also told us attributes. Clear? So these are the main keywords that is involved in the relational model, and next we are going to see about the integrity constraint. Next topic is integrity constraint that we can see in the next video. Okay, thank you.